let's talk about presence. As far as Lightroom is concerned, that deals with clarity, vibrance, and saturation. So clarity, what is it? I'm going to try to explain to you that it is a local contrast enhancement or enhancer as opposed to a global contrast. And you know, without getting into a lot of detail about this, basically what the software is doing is it's looking for groups or clusters of pixels and saying, okay, we can enhance this and we can enhance that. And each section, if I'm not mistaken, gets enhanced a little bit differently than the one beside it and all that kind of stuff. That being said, I'm going to move the slider all the way over to the far right, and you can see that it really increased the contrast. And probably in a different way than the contrast slider would. Let's just come back over here and take your contrast slider and move it over. You see how that did that? Not as nice. If I take the slider for the clarity slider and move it all the way to the left, you can see how it softens things up. And I'm not a fan of that for most images. So anyways, now, why would you want to add clarity? Well, all your images that come out of your digital camera are inherently soft. So let's just give that a little bit of a kick in the pants. So I'm just going to give it, you know, plus 20. And, you know, if you have a lens that is not quite as sharp, you might want to give it a little bit more. Anyways, this is what I'm giving mine. So now the next thing is I want to deal with vibrance. Vibrance and saturation are kind of the same. And in our English language, we interchange those two words on a daily basis. So if you're increasing your saturation, you're increasing the vibrancy of the image. The difference between the two as far as Adobe's software is concerned is this. When you increase the saturation in your image, you're increasing every pixel's vibrancy. When you decrease the saturation, you're obviously going in the other direction. So if I were to take the saturation slider and move it all the way over, 100%, you can see that this has gone absolutely over the top and crazy. If I take the saturation slider and drag it to the left, I've taken all the color out of the image. Okay, so saturation works in a way that we're comfortable and used to understanding how it would work. Vibrance increases the saturation selectively, if you will. So what is going on here is the software is looking at the image, and it is, you know, in this image, let's just say it has determined that there are some pixels that are already saturated and there are some pixels that are not saturated. And the vibrance slider is going to look at the not so much saturated pixels and raise them up to the already saturated pixels. And then once they're kind of on an even ground, then they'll raise everybody up from there. While it's doing that, Vibrance is going to attempt to ignore reds and anything that kind of has any close association with red. And if you look just a little bit down here in the HSL sliders, you'll see that if we have red here, well, a close association would be orange and yellow, and on the other side of the spectrum would be magenta and purple. So the software is going to try to ignore that while doing this or that. If I drag this slider all the way over to the right, I don't think you're really going to see a whole lot of difference as far as me trying to explain this to you. No, I don't see, well, it is, but it's not as, let's just do it this way. In the saturation, when I went all the way to the left, I got rid of all the color. In the vibrance, when I go all the way to the left, I'm going to get rid of all the color. And look what happens. The software is trying to ignore red. Got it? Got it. Double click, set her up there. Now, some people think that all images require a little bit of vibrancy boost as well as a clarity boost. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to stick with 20 and 20. All right. So now that ends the basics tab. I hope you play around with this and, you know, experiment a little bit, all that kind of stuff. These values are the ones that I'm using. Doesn't mean that they are golden. It's just how I'm looking at my image today on this particular monitor. In the next video, we'll talk about tone curve, the next panel down. We'll talk about the tone curve, and why I don't ever, 99% of the time, I don't go in and mess around with it. We'll deal with that later.